In this screencast, I'm going to talk about Drush Recipes and show some examples of using it. So I've been very excited about this project. I'm basically taking the idea of chef and cookbooks and bringing it to the Drupal Drush world. So you get a series of commands. I've got them all listed there so far. Stepping through what an example recipe looks like. Basically, we're creating a JSON, YAML, or XML. It'll take all three as input or output. And you're breaking it down into a series of Drush calls and giving it a human readable name, like heightened security or something. And the idea would be that we start to add these into modules, themes, and distributions, or use them standalone for provisioning systems and things. And so this can go the extra mile beyond a make file. So you see a lot of different people, with their modules. I'm one of them, right? I have a project called Textbook. And so Textbook is just, hey, go get all these dependencies and pull them together, right? Ton of dependencies. But there's more to it than just a make file, right? Especially if you want to apply it to an existing site. So this is where Drush Recipes can come in. Drush Recipes can also use make files because it's just a series of Drush calls. And so you're going to basically do chain automation. So you're going to call one Drush call that then goes and calls a whole bunch of other Drush calls. Instead of doing a lot of pipes and instead of having custom bash scripts, at the very least this should help make your custom bash scripts simpler. So let's get started with this. So we're going to do Drush DL Drush Recipes. And yes, right. So it's just a Drush plugin. You see it goes in my case .drush. So we're going to do Drush help. See what the commands are very quickly. We've got cook, DDT, love that one. That's for target diffing, where you can compare what it would take to generate a recipe to get from one site state to another. And it has a bunch of different ways in which it's evaluating that we'll show. You can list current recipes. There's future support for being able to pull them in from a remote service, so you could have, kind of like how you can have a chef server, you could do that with Drush Recipes as well. And I'm working on a web service just like that. So there's also an interactive command prompt to write them, so you don't have to make these by hand by any means. So let's start with an example one. So I'll do drush at online.ou because I know that's one of my targets. Cook and DR security is one that comes baked in. So this is an example of doing a security check and then enhancing the security of a site, right? So there's a series of modules that you would go and get that you're going to go and get every time to improve security. So why not just have a recipe that has your standard way of heightening core Drupal security. So what this will do, you see it prints out, hey, we're about to cook this. And you can actually list multiple commands. It'll show you them in order. You can weight them, things like that. So, hey, in the DR security script, it actually references another recipe. So you can have nested recipes to get more granular with things and make them more reusable. So we've got drush en update, delete this variable, show me a list of things that need security updates. Then we're going to disable the update module, set registrations to 1, disable PHP filter, uninstall that stupid thing, enable sekkit, which is a security enhancement module, and then enable paranoia, which hides the ability to turn off paranoia or the PHP module. It's kind of funny. So let's see what that does, or what it looks like. So we've got this executing against a target, and it's effectively going to go through, and it's going to run each and every one of these, right? So hey, adding ingredient, drush variable delete, right? Checked for updates, update data for paranoia, shows these things. Hey, there's a security format list. The user registration was set to 1. Hey, that's complete. Disable PHP, that's complete. Uninstall it, right? So it just stepped through and hit each one of those. Another example of one of these is there's the D7, what is it? D7 admin UX, I believe is the name of it. Nope, I didn't type it the right way. So Drush DLR is for Drush list recipes. There we go. D7 admin UX. So then we do Drush at online.ou target, cook, and D7 admin UX. It's another example of one you do, right? So first thing is this references another recipe I wrote called Crufty Core Off, which turns off the crufty aspects of core from an administrative perspective. So we disable toolbar, shortcut, and overlay, and I know a bunch of you just cheered when you were reading this or watching it, whatever it is. And then drush en admin menu toolbar, and then set the variable for admin menu client cache off, because I have problems with that personally. So when we run this one, we would disable the old crappy way of doing this and enable the new, or at least old school, better way of doing this. Again, showcasing the granularity. We go back. There's actually a D8 in D7 admin UX, and so that instead will go and get navbar. So I can do D8 in D7 admin UX. I believe it's more detail. There we go. So if I run that with more detail, it'll give me the a longer readout of what's involved with this recipe. So some of the other commands is actually the ability to write recipes. So if we do DWR, we'll enter a machine name, live screencast. The name of this is, it's a live screencast, so it better work. Really long name. Hey, I probably should have put this here. Version, we'll just say it's 1.0. This is a, right now this is just metadata, but we'll say it's an add-on, and I'm the author of it. That's not required either. So then we drop into the drush calls. So you can also do conditionals, which is flippin' sweet. But so we do drush, if I could type, drush DL views, drush en views, comma ctools, right? And so, if you don't have ctools, it's automatically going to grab that. Views requires it, so that was kind of redundant. We could do, drush registry rebuild. We can type whatever we want in here. Drush cc all. You can do make files, right? So I could do like coolstuff.make, and then that'll convert that into the drush make coolstuff.make. Again, it's making a bit of an assumption that that file's there. But you could package that with it as well, so you could have a recipe and a make file, the recipe referencing the make file, which throws all your dependencies together. So you can use these two approaches together. Let's drop into a conditional here. So if I type C, it'll drop me into a conditional loop. And so what we do is we add references to recipes that can produce branching path logic. So for example, you could create a recipe that references this, we had the D7 admin UX and the D8 in D7 admin UX, right? So there's two different approaches to the same problem space of rethinking the administrative UI in Drupal 7. So what we're going to do, we're going to copy that one, and then we're going to also do D7 admin UX dot recipe, which is the alternative. And then, we're also going to give support for that Crufty Core Off one. If we scroll back up, there we go, Crufty Core Off. And so we'll just do Crufty Core Off dot recipe. So you could do any one of those, right? One just disables it, the other one actually disables it and calls the other one disables it, calls the other one, and does the Drupal 8 equivalent, which is navbar. So we're going to X for exiting this conditional. What's the question you're asking? What UX would you like for admins of this site? Okay, so now we're out of the conditional, we're back into the larger picture. So we can either write another conditional or we can keep adding more drush calls. We could also have recipes that are required at this point. So it could be that DR security one, right? And then we're going to do drush vset cool to stuff. Right, something completely bogus. So we're going to hit X to be done. If you're running PHP 5.4, this will also show YAML because we want to support things prior to PHP 5.4. It also supports JSON and XML natively. So let's do JSON because I think that looks nicer. And then we can either write this to a file or print it to the screen. So we're going to write this to a file. It's going to automatically select our home directory .drush/recipes, which is a new directory it'll create if it can. So we'll just hit yep. And then it's taken that initial machine name and created a recipe. So let's look at what this looks like. It gives us the example command, which is drush cook, and then live screencast. So we'll do, we can't just do that, we have to do it at a target. Drush at online.ou for the server, cook live screencast. And so here's the reading what we wrote back. We've got drush DL views, en, registry rebuild, clear caches, make that cool stuff file, and then we've got a conditional statement. It's going to be this or this or this. Then we're going to drop into security, which actually drops in even deeper to update status. Back out of security, we're going to vset that random value, and then we're done. So let's run this through. Now this, it's going to complain about some of this, right? Because we just made it up. But we're going to do registry rebuild. Here's our clearing caches against that target. The nice thing is with the way Drush works, it just inherits that target. So all of this will be applied to whatever the target is. Here's our conditional. So we can either cancel, and we don't have to do this, or we can apply one of these other 3 routines. So we're going to say just do crufty core off, and then it'll drop into crufty core. You see there, hey, you're about to load these ingredients. It's going to disable those things, apply them, uninstall all that garbage, do the security update routine, and then vset that random thing. So you see we're creating files that then are further automating our automation. The last one that I'm incredibly excited about, so let's do a drush SA. You'll know some of the random stuff that's on my server. So we're going to do drush, and we're going to do the DDT. This is for target diffing, as it's called. So we're going to do drush at online.ou en profiler builder, and this is just because I know it'll work better once I do that. So we're going to enable profiler builder. It's another project I maintain. I integrate with it all the time. So do drush at online.ou DDT, which is for drush diff targets. And then we're going to supply another system that it should be mapping to. So in this case, we're going to do at rocket.bto pro. I haven't done this yet, but let's see what it does. It should be able to diff those. This is what's going to happen. It's going to load up the first site and say, what would it take to go from the first configuration as far as modules, themes, variables, roles, and permissions to, if you treat rocket.bto pro as the final state, right? So we'll kick this out as JSON and we'll just print it to the screen. So what this is you're effectively creating a blueprint of how you can go about maintaining a site or getting one site to be like another one. Where is this important? So you inherit a client, right? They're running OpenAtrium. It's 2 years after OpenAtrium is released. It's a year since they last did any updates, and you aren't the original person that made that project, right? Maybe you're not super familiar with OpenAtrium. What you can do is install a stock version of OpenAtrium and just do a drush at, OpenAtrium, whatever, DDT, and then OMG old client site, right? And this will tell you what's been changed on old client site versus this default state of OpenAtrium. Now, this doesn't have support for everything yet, right? I'm not getting into, that these views were overridden and stuff like that, but there's at least features that's easier to see. This can really help give you an idea, and you'll see, this is a pretty ridiculous target diff, right? So I can immediately see, hey, it's going to require almost 600 drush commands to get this one site to be like the other one. That tells me they're not related in any way. If you have 2 distributions, right, and then you give one to someone that's kind of a quasi-admin, and they make a whole bunch of changes, this can be a good way of coming back, and without even having to go to the site, run one command and see like, oh wow, okay, yeah, you didn't really change that much, awesome, or wow, you've got this cool thing you're showing me, but it's because you made a ton of modifications to it, which can be a good and bad thing. So you'll see it noticed that these permissions were different. It is making an assumption about the roles, unfortunately, that the role IDs are the same. So in this case, this isn't really this part isn't relevant because these are completely different sites. You kind of need the same distribution for roles to make sense at all. But you'll see the permissions are totally different. We've got several hundred of them in here. Variable sets, it's going to look at what the difference in those variable settings are. If they're the same, it won't do anything. If it's the variable's been dropped, it'll throw in a VDEL statement instead of vset. And so using Profiler Builder, because I mentioned I enabled that, it'll automatically sanitize the variables that come across so that you don't get cron key, you don't get a lot of other cache values and timestamps that almost shouldn't be in the variables table because they're just bloating up caches, quite frankly. But you won't get any of those, so that's a good thing when you have Profiler Builder on with that. So we're still scrolling up, trying to get to some of the enable statements. You see how many, just how different these two systems really are, which in and of itself is useful information to have. So if we keep scrolling up through here, okay, so there's a whole bunch of VDELs. You see we went way past where we needed to there. A whole bunch of variable deletions. We can keep going because it's only the there we go. Okay. So here's the things that needed to be enabled to get it from one state to the other. You see medium is one of them because this is using a distribution. So it's effectively impossible for this one potentially to do that. We could get there by doing the vsets appropriately. If we did a vset of one distro to another and then had the correct modules enabled, you could effectively go from one distribution to another. You notice I believe this is the disables, this might even be the downloads, are pretty, so there we go. Those are just the downloads, right? So this also is going to look at the modules that are not enabled but are actually just downloaded by the system. And then so here's the things that need disabled. Here's the things that one system table registry has that the other one doesn't, which you can get a sense of the complexity of one site versus the other. One is just like my personal blog. The other is a whole stinking learning management system. And then here's the projects that need to be enabled. So the enables and disables really aren't that different. It's just all the things that need to be downloaded as far as potential dependencies and things like that. So you can see how this would be pretty powerful. The last thing, and what is not done yet, but I've got this really cool address requested. You can get .recipe domains at the moment, and so the idea is that long term we have kind of this web service that you could, similar to Dropbucket, you could submit recipes to. You could upvote and downvote other people's recipes, or have your own, maybe private recipes or something like that. And through this, you would be able to effectively share your recipes with other people in an open manner, so that we could, all use the standard, 5 or 6, Drush calls to do a safe site upgrade, or hey, here's a routine that's for going from target 1 to target 2, safely, or whatever it is. Here's the best way to do security hardening. Here's the best way to prep a site for running Bootstrap or Zen or any other framework that has, frameworks are starting to have implications beyond just theme. The other thing is, again, it's super early, but you could say like, hey, I want everything by author 1. Just give me the things that are add-ons, and then you could click the XML button, and I still need to format it, but that this would be a series of recipes that are coming from the site that you could point to and basically copy and paste this in. There's a command for it. I have it all commented out at the moment. But that way you could kind of get your list of the recipes that you want and then be able to share that with someone else much more easily. So instead of saying like, oh, you go and run these 20 Drush commands, you put it up on the Drush Recipes website. You give them like 3 Drush commands, which would basically be the Drush DL, Drush Recipes, pipe. It's actually on the home page. It's Drush CC. Drush, right? So if you do this, it'll automatically cook the D7 admin UX. You could do something similar to this utilizing the web service. So you put in another one that automatically downloads that, and then another one that automatically runs it. So that you could give someone a very simple one line like, hey, go and run this, and they would have the same recipe executed. So this is the current state of Drush Recipes. I'm extremely active in the queue. This is a project that I've been really throwing a lot of effort into recently. So please bring your ideas, bring bugs, anything you can find, because I really think this is a great way of potentially disrupting the huge tower distributions model, especially in upgrades and long-term maintenance types of things.